Hi, so welcome back to another video. I know you all see the new uh color scheme, right? How do you all feel about it? Well, in today's video, I'm gonna be breaking down today's trade that I was able to take on the Nasdaq. Well, there's gonna be a live recorded trade that I took. The screen recording. I'm gonna post it after the breakdown, so it's gonna be somewhere at the end of the video, right? So ended up opening at 9:30. See a huge push to the downside. Took out London lows on the Nasdaq. On the S&P 500, we didn't take out London lows. Up to now, we're still the London lows are still open, right? So we didn't take out London lows. That kind of created an SMT. We took out all the sell side liquidities on the Nasdaq. Why we didn't do that on the S&P on the S&P 500? That kind of created a bullish SMT. So when I saw this fair value gap getting inversed right here, as soon as I saw this inverse, I ended up taking my buy trade right here. My stops was at this lows, which where my stops was at, and then I was targeting this high, and then London and Asian highs. That's what I was targeting for London and Asian, which were actually kind of good drawn liquidity since they were kind of the relative equal highs. So that was for a 1 to 1.6. Ended up getting kind of stopped out. Actually didn't wait for me to get fully stopped out. I was almost getting stopped out and ended up closing manually. And that was because I realized I actually made an SMT. But before that, I actually entered another buy trade, right? So as soon as price was pushing higher, I ended up entering the buy trade, and then I closed it after because of the SMT. I ended up closing my trade after. Then, for some reason, I don't know why I actually ended up taking my buy position. And the reason why I did that was because I ended up seeing price drop back into this fair value gap here. As we were going back up, I ended up taking my buy position. So in that way, I was feeling like we may, keep pushing to the upside, but still keep in mind that we have an SMT here, so we actually shouldn't take another trade. So that was a mistake I did there. I ended up getting stopped out right here manually, and then ended up taking my sell. So as price was dropping, I ended up closing and then taking my sell trade right here, because if you notice here, after the SMT, we have this IFUG here, creating an IFUG right there. So I ended up taking my sell trade right there. I'm sure that's what you guys saw right there. Ended up taking a sell trade right there. The short was right there. That's somewhere right here. My stops was at this high, sorry. And then my first take profit was right here, and then my second take profit was right here. Well, my wife was actually kind of fluctuating, so you guys might not have seen the push to the downside, but I ended up getting all my TP hit. But then what I didn't like after was the greed aspect that happened after this, because as you can see here, we've taken our previous day lows, yesterday's lows, right? And also London lows. So we're still creating a bullish SMT since the S&P 500 isn't pushing all the way to this lows right here. But that still kind of creates a bullish SMT. And here I am looking at this fair value gap here to be inverse. And even apart from that fair value gap, I am going to the 3-minute time frame here. And you can see there, I am drawing that fair value gap here, because I don't want to see this 1 minute fair value gap get inversed and then price starting to the 1 minute or to the 3 minute fair value gap and then keeps respected to the downside. Instead, what I wanted to see price do was to inverse this gap, take out this high, kind of forming a market structure shift. Then we kind of inverse this 3 minute fair value gap here. So as soon as we inverse that gap, ain't gonna lie, bro. As soon as I saw that, I was really feeling we might actually keep pushing to the upside. So I ended up having a bad feel. My trade was supposed to be here. I ended up having a bad feel right here. My stops was at this low, at this high, sorry, just above the breaker right there. And then my TP was actually at this highs. I share the same take profit I was targeting earlier, which was this highs, and then London and Asian highs, right? So as you can see here, price just ended up rallying up to the upside, ended up taking out these highs right here. Took out these highs, took out these highs. But why we didn't do that on the S&P, on the Nasdaq, sorry. So that kind of also created a bearish S&P. That's why I went so aggressive and put my stops to break even. I really went aggressive on that trade, put my stops to break even, and that's when I ended up getting stopped at break even. So at the end of the day, I was actually kind of up very, very little today. Up very, very little today. If we had avoided this trade here, the second buy trade I took here, maybe we would have actually been kind of up for the day, because as soon as I realized the SMT, after realizing the SMT and I closed, as get stopped at break even, I would have just looked for a good trade to the downside, which was this IFUG here, trade to the downside, and then we would have just called it a day here. So yeah, that was basically today's trade. And now I'm gonna show you guys the screen recordings of today's trade. Alright, so I'm taking my buy there. That's why I took my buy trade. I'm targeting this short-term high and then London and Asian high. So as we were pushing, I realized that we kind of created an SMT with the SMT500. I ended up putting my stops to break even, and that's why I ended up getting stopped at break even. So yeah, that was the SMT that we had, the SMT500. Like I said, it was kind of dumb that I actually ended up taking another trade, because as you can see here, price already dropped into that fair value cap, which is literally below the consequent encroachment of the IFEG. So as I'm seeing price start to push to the upside regarding the SMT, I still ended up taking a buy trade, which was kind of not necessary. Yeah, yeah. So I ended up still taking the buy trade, having that inverse value gap in mind. But still, man, it's still not necessary for me to take that buy trade. So I ended up getting stopped out right there. Yeah, ended up getting stopped out right there, my two positions, and ended up taking another sell trade. Like I said, because there was an inverse value gap there. Not taking my sell trade, my stops are just highs, and then I'm targeting the previous day lows and that short term low right there. So at this point, I'm knowing that this SMT should definitely hold, since price doesn't want to keep pushing to the upside, even though we had a bullish SMT. So at this point, I'm feeling like S&P 500 and the Nasdaq really wants to push the downside, especially when we kind of created a balanced price range. Because if you notice, there is a bullish value gap there, which inversed that previous bearish value gap. And now on the way to the downside, we created a bearish value gap. So yeah, there was a balanced price range there. And yeah, my Wi-Fi ended up taking me out. My Wi-Fi ended up having some misbehavior, so I was kind of locked out for a minute. And I came back and I realized that all my take profit were hit. So at this point, I would have actually been done trading. I actually kind of went break even on the day, if you notice, because I ended up literally making back what we lost. So I was kind of break even for the day. I'm not gonna lie, I would have actually left it like that, because I would have literally just left shit like that. But here, we've taken our previous day lows, still the short-term lows that took our London lows. On the S&P 500, we haven't even taken out London lows though. So we're still giving bullish we're still giving the bullish S&T. So I'm still looking for trades to the upside, especially to target those Asian highs. So at this point, I'm looking at this 3 minutes fair value gap here. I want to see this 3 minutes fair value gap here get inversed, especially when we've created a market structure shift. And yeah, I ended up taking another buy trade here. Actually ended up having a bad fill. That wasn't exactly where I entered from. And then my stop loss was literally at the breaker, at the top of the breaker block right there. So I'm still having the same target as my the trade that I took, the first trade I took, which is at those highs. The first high from the SMT, and then second take profit to be Asian highs and London highs, which I really thought were actually going to be draws on liquidities for the day, because they were actually created relatively equal highs. Because they were actually relatively equal highs. So as soon as I saw it, we had another bearish SMT. S&P 500 went so high, took out all those highs. It's not Asian and London highs. As you can see on the Nasdaq, we didn't take out those highs. So yeah, I had to go aggressive. Ended up getting stopped out. break even there. Yeah, so that was basically it for today's trade. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.